whilst the year-to-date actual opening balance will be from the 1st of July going forward all the way to the end of August at the closing balance. Does that make sense?
So the month ended August should mean the month starting the 1st of August, or the month ended the 31st of July.
Yes, that's what it means.
Okay. Could that be amended for the next report, please?
Yeah.
Every cost for basically keeping the lights on at the council are put into a pot and apportioned across all departments within the council. And so Malvern Community Board has been determined to take 0.42% of it. We attempted to give you a breakdown, as you asked, into the various areas, but previously you asked about whether you could have it on a percentage person basis. We don't all fill in timesheets at the council, so that's not possible, and it's also not all the costs are salary based. So it's also utilities, training, things like that, insurances, which go
where is the most efficient for us to run our meetings, i.e., but we can't do that when we're just charged a 0.42% of the overall staff cost. We can't look at making efficiencies. And that's where it's really difficult for us as a community board to try and minimise our cost and maximise our value to the community, because that's what we're about. We're about getting around the community. So it's really good to get to Springfield. It's even better to get to Arthur's Pass, and it's just as good to get to West Melton or Darfield, and even Sheffield. So we need to go to those places and meet with the communities face to face, because we can't rely on this internet thing, because I've got better mobile here than I have at home, which is amazing. But we just need to be aware of where we're spending cost, and that 110 is a big number. And I'd just like for the record to make us clearly aware, our revenue is 171,000 a year, which is $25 per ratepayer in Malvern, less the GST, because it has to be done net of GST. So we have 171,000. 110,000 of that goes back to council as a cost, which we've just been talking about. And then 60,000 of that 171 goes to our remuneration as a group of 5 people, which is, you can work that one out. It's 5 people. It's under 10,000 a year. So that's a fee that we're paid. We can't change that because that's determined by the remuneration committee. We can't do anything about it. We have to, that as a cost we have to do. So the only thing we can do is try and affect that 110,000. And that's what we're trying to do, is to reduce that 110,000, hopefully not increase it, but reduce it so that we get better value for the community. You'll also, because you're all good mathematicians, have worked out that 171,000 minus 110 minus 60 adds up to what? $1,000. So that's $1,000 we have as a community board to cover moving around, our operational costs, our training, anything we do for the community. So we've now got no discretionary fund, as everybody knows. So we've got nothing we can spend on the community. And that 171,000 comes from where? I keep looking at the community because they're here. Thank you all for coming. That 171,000 comes from the community direct. So it's your money that we're spending. But we're not allowed to actually spend any back on you, which is all part of how the regulations run and the Malvern Community Board runs. But so we're a business running in deficit from day one is essentially what's happening. And that also almost is untenable. So
Right, Carl,
thank you for listening.
Could we sum up, Sharon?
Yep, thank you. Look, just a couple of quick comments in terms of you can choose to have your meetings wherever you want to. As you can see, the team will travel, and that is part of those costs, so that we will come out with the IT systems to record. Staff are here. You're not being charged anything over and above for that. That is wrapped up into the costs because you want the staff to be able to come out and engage with the community as well. So from that point of view, there are no additional costs for having Denise here as part of the team. That is what is attributed to the Malvern Community Board. Sarah and Thomas, with regards to, do you want to pass any further comment about revenue, income and the working operational business?
I guess it's the obvious of if you wanted more funds to disperse, then you could potentially charge a higher fee.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that because we're already negative. I'll give you the number. We're already negative 30,000 by the end of the year. It's all in the figures. So we'd have to put that. You're talking about putting the rates up by an amount that allows us to be more. That does get complicated because we do have the surplus from previous years. So I don't want to get in a conversation about that because
Sharon.
And I don't know that surplus is the right word to describe, but would you, I guess, Sarah and Thomas, do you want to describe the dollar figures as to why it is and why it has been accrued over a number of years?
Can I just firstly say, I'm not suggesting you put your rate up. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that was one option that was open to you. The balance that is there, Tom has more knowledge on the surplus that you've been carrying.
The surplus essentially, well, the surplus is the remaining balance from previous financial years where expected ratepayer growth was higher than what we had budgeted, which is accounted for essentially extra money that we've gathered with previous representation reviews with West Malvern moving into the Malvern ward. We have had extra ratepayers than expected again, which is accounted to not a surplus, but the extra money that we have, which is discounting the rate currently, without the surplus, or not surplus, sorry, without this pot of money sitting here, the rate would have to be higher to start with to cover the costs, to break net zero.
But that rate, Thomas, that we had originally obviously was too high. And then we went from 45 down to 24. Well, now it's gone up to 25 again now this time. So in actual, that surplus was created from charging our ratepayers too much anyway at that stage.
Yes, the issue is that the representation review,
Yes,
and
yeah.
when the council makes those changes, normally happens in about October, which doesn't align with when we do our annual and long-term plans in the financial year. So it took 9 months for us to adjust for what was happening.
Yeah, appreciate it. Phil,
So what you're saying is that you've under budgeted this time by 30,000, quite a large percentage on the rates that you are going to charge the locals now. So is that rate going to increase in the next financial year? We need
Not-
we
not sure
need
of that.
200,000 now to operate. We're already worked out with 30,000 in deficit before we start, and that's from under rating charge. So is that rate going to be increased for a community board, if there is one after representation review, by another whatever percentage it is?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I can't recall that. We can get that information for you.
right, Kelvin, I just don't want to prolong this too much
Yeah.
longer, but I think as long as we've got some answers and we get what we particularly have asked the questions of.
Yeah, I'd
Kelvin?
just like to highlight that it's called a support. I'm just checking what it is actually called surplus on the financial statement. So that surplus currently stands at around 90,000. So by the end of this financial year, which is June the 30th, it will be down at about 60,000. And that's because we've run at 30,000. I'm just explaining it to everybody so that everybody understands where we're not negative 30. There's 90,000 sitting there. So there will be at the end of this financial year, because we'll be nice and efficient and not overspend, there will be something like 60,000 surplus still sat there. So if the community board continues in its current form, that will then be 60,000 that they could potentially use for future years for paying for operational costs. I understand.
Yeah.
If I'm correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. No, I was just making it clear to everybody that seems to be
Okay,
what.
John, and then Phil. John?
Thank you for that explanation. So the surplus is really an accumulated targeted rate fund. And I suppose I'll change my mind about putting a motion that what I would like to understand is that how can that amount be transferred from the accumulated funds to current operating funds? So if I could have that as a specific question to be answered for the next meeting, that would be appreciated.
I can
Okay.
answer that now for you. That would come about from a discussion around annual plan and a shift, because if that money is transferred across into 1 year's operational funds, then that may alter how much is rated for.
Yeah. Phil, did you have a question? Oh, Phil? Right,
So
John?
in relation to that, the funds that got taken out of the targeted rate pool and put into the accumulated, there will be somewhere in council a record and a resolution moving those funds so that they have to go through the annual plan again to come back to the targeted rate pool. Is that correct, Madam?
It's a long time since I've been called madam, but thank you, John. I wouldn't necessarily say that there would be a resolution of council. I can't, in terms of, I can't say that, yes, there is a resolution, because that may be something that occurred a number of years ago. So we would have to go back to have a look to see if there was a resolution or not.
It would be greatly appreciated by myself and hopefully my colleagues on the board if we could have an answer to that. Thank you.
Right, that's fine. Phil, did you want to just add to it? You okay? All right, if there's no further questions at this stage, we've still got some more answers to come yet, so we shall look forward to those. But thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Right, we'll now move on. Who's the lady with the name?
Ask Denise to introduce.
Yeah, right. Denise, would you like to come up now and introduce your staff as well? That would be fantastic. Thank you, Denise.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come out and meet with the Malvern Community Board. We're delighted at the level of interest that the Malvern Community Board have indicated in the topic that we're going to talk to you about, and we welcome the opportunity to discuss it with you and to also foreshadow some of the engagement that we intend will occur as part of this work program going forward. Before I launch into it, I thought I'd just take the opportunity to introduce the two members of the Community Insights and Policy team, and as well as giving you their name, I thought it would be useful perhaps if Hannah could touch on the youth and the older person strategy and the engagement that they managed around that recently, and Nicola's just concluded a piece of work called the Customer Experience Survey. So with your indulgence, I thought we'd just use the opportunity so you get a bit of a broader understanding of the sorts of role that Hannah and Nicola play in the group. Is that okay?
Certainly, I would appreciate that, Denise.
Great,
Thank you. So, Hannah?
Mr. Chair, can I just suggest that the primary reason for coming was about the community halls and networks?
Correct. Yeah, well,
that should be the priority
Yeah,
conversation, if that's okay.
I'm sorry, I should have realised that, but Denise. So, Hannah, would you like to speak?
Kia ora. My name is Hannah. I am a community policy advisor for the Community Insights and Policy team at Council. So just to clarify, am I talking about the youth strategy, or do you want me to talk about the?
Okay, so we'll just do intros for now.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
And good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of your meeting this evening. I'm Nicola Sutton, and I am the head of Community Insights and Policy. So we're a small team of 3, and our role is to provide the data and the work to support projects that may be taking place around the community services and facilities that are offered across the district.
So just in terms of the program of work that we are going to talk to you about today, it's a program of work that has a medium to long-term focus, and it's particularly about council-owned community facilities. And by way of introduction, I just want to talk about how the work program introduces or is intended to address 3 questions, and Nicola and Hannah will touch on that today. So the first question that this program of work looks at is, how does council prioritise what it spends its time, money and contribution on in regards to new community facilities? So we call that a decision-making tool, but it's intended to provide some clarity and some direction and some transparency about how council prioritises what it spends money and resources on. And just to give that a bit of context, over the recent long-term plan process, there were 150 submissions that requested council spend money or resources on new community facilities. And some of those facilities suggested included a squash courts, a gymnastics facility, performing arts facility, museum and ice rinks. So there's a piece of work that this work program is picking up that says, how does council prioritise some of those, what it prioritises in terms of requests from the community in terms of facilities. The second question that this work program looks at is, what does the future arrangement of community facilities look like, and why does that make sense? So this is to do with the facilities network review, and Nicola and Hannah will touch on that. So that's about, people may have read in the long-term plan around that council is looking at a hub and spoke model, and its primary focus will be in looking at facilities that are multi-purpose, because if you have single purpose facilities, often you are duplicating the cost of staffing and other sorts of resources that go with it. So there's some thinking to be done and some communication to be shared around what is the future model of this community network look like going forward. And the third question, which I think is the one that has piqued certainly some of you individually, your interest, has been, how does council ensure that community services meet the changing needs and aspirations of communities? And so that talks about and looks at, are there opportunities for converting a facility that currently exists as a publicly hireable facility? Is there an opportunity for converting that to a special purpose facility? And an example of that might be one subject that's been discussed has been around a martial arts dojo that services a range of martial arts clubs across the district, as opposed to just being available as a public facility. And there are some examples of single purpose facilities that have existed in the past. And an example of that would be a ballet school, where it's not available as a public facility, but it's at least for a particular purpose that the community has identified it has a need for. So that's, we'll touch on the future of some of the community facilities that some of you will have a particular interest in. So on that basis, I'll just hand across to Nicola to talk about what the program of work looks like going forward.
Excellent. So I'll talk about two pieces of the program of work, and then I'll hand over to Hannah to talk about the assessment piece of work for the community facilities. So I just want to briefly touch on the two other areas of work. One is around a facilities decision-making tool. So that is a piece of work that council will undertake to respond to the requests that come into council for new community facilities or for changes to community facilities. And in the past, it's been often these requests have come in without any opportunity for council to think about them beforehand and being in a position where they're needing to make a decision around them. And so this piece of work is around developing the tools to enable community to understand how they participate in a process where they want a new facility or think a new facility would be good for the community. So what do they need to do and be thinking about, and what information do they need to present to council? And then what is the process for council in order to assess those on an objective basis that makes good sense at the end of it and gives council good guidance on what steps it might take further in relation to that. So there'll be some requests that come in that after they've gone through a process, council goes, actually, that's not something that council's going to take any further. And there'll be other facilities that go through that process where council goes, actually, this makes sense for us to invest some more in thinking about what this looks like for community and the level of community interest in it. So that piece of work has been started, and it's very much around developing a framework and a tool, and it is planned that that will go back to council for June next year. And so part of that work is developing the process, developing the tools that will support it. And then we're going to do, we've got 3 facilities that we're going to just do a little bit of looking at how they would flow through that. So that's based on the input that came to the long-term plan. So we know there was a lot of interest in a performing arts facility. There was lots of interest in gymnastics facilities and lots of interest around a potential military museum. And so they'll just be used as case studies to test the thinking and the tools and go, what happens with these facilities as they come through it. And the benefit of that for community and for the Malvern Community Board is that if you've got groups in your community saying we want this or we want that, then you'll be able to say to them, well, in order for council to be able to make to progress that further and to think about their commitment to that kind of request, this is the kind of thing you'll need to do, and here are the tools for doing that. So that's the purpose of that. The second piece of work is around the network plan. Now, there's currently a network plan that exists. It was approved by council in October 2021, and it's based on, as Denise said, it's based on a hub and spoke model. And so it's around clusters of facilities within wards, plus an additional cluster that is around the high country facilities. So that's your Castle Hill and your Arthur's Pass type facilities. So there is a Malvern cluster within that network plan, and there are clusters for Ellesmere and Springs and Rolleston, I think, are joined within that. And the idea being that typically within those clusters, there is a hub. It is a facility that's potentially staffed by council, and from that facility they're able to look after the other facilities that are in the community. And some of those facilities will be very local facilities, so it might be a sports well, it's not hall, it's probably sports pavilion or that kind of thing that's very sort of singular in its use. And then there'll be other facilities that are multi-purpose. And so if you think about the Malvern cluster, you've got both West Melton and Darfield have got libraries that are staffed by council, and the community centre in West Melton. So these are staffed facilities that can look after the other facilities that are in the hub. So that piece of work is around updating that plan. So at the moment it's focused just on community centres, halls and libraries. It doesn't give a full picture of what is available in the community in terms of facilities. And so the update of that will include pools and also sports pavilions that are open for a wider use than just one group. And also we'll be looking at what are the principles in that network plan and what is that network plan trying to achieve, and make sure that that's in line with where we're also going in the future in terms of decision making. So that's an update process, and we anticipate that that will be completed by June next year as well. So once again, that's a piece of council work, and the benefit for the Malvern Community Board is that you're able to see your cluster of facilities and understand how that works in the broader network of facilities. The network plan also helps the council when they're making decisions about where to place new facilities, what kind of facilities are needed in that cluster, and how might those best meet the needs of the community. And then the third piece of work is around the assessment of community halls, and that have at this particular point we're going to focus our energy on those that appear to be lower utilised and lower revenue, because those are the ones where we want to look at what do we need to be doing in order to take those community facilities forward. So I'm going to hand over to Hannah, because there's various parts to that piece of work. And Hannah's been working on the development of the project plans for them, so able to speak to them a little bit more to the point.
So if we break down the process that we're going to take for this piece of work, it's essentially broken down into 3 component parts. So the first part is planning and research. So that's making sure that we make really, really good decisions, that we know everything that we should know before we enter into the kind of running of this process, this project. And then the second part of the process is a really thorough engagement with community. So talking with the communities where the halls and community spaces are, and hearing from them what it is that they want and what their needs are, and what the importance of the community spaces, and also in terms of what they potentially could see in the future going forward. So hearing all of the ideas. What we do is we then take those two component parts away. So we take the research and the information that we've gathered, and we take what the community has told us, and we assess it, and we go, what are the best options? At that point, we ask for feedback. So we ask the community again, what do you think? Have we got it right? They let us know. And then from there, we boil it down to one or two key options, which would then go through to an LTP process, which because of the nature of the work, we have to go through a very specific process when making any decisions about community assets, which includes a full consultation, it includes hearings. So the best place for that work would be an LTP, because that's already happening. So we want to try and minimise as much cost as possible by doing it through the process that's already there. We're really interested in your thoughts, because you've got the ear to the ground in terms of the community and what their interests are. So we would be really interested in you partnering and being part of this process with us, so that we can get a really clear picture of all of the important parts throughout this entire process.
I'm just going to, so I'll just add a little bit to what Hannah
Sorry,
says.
Hannah, what was your third proposal? You had your first and your second engagement. What was your third? Did you add three?
Apologies. So the third is the final consultation process through the LTP. So that's where we take our 2 or 3 key options to the LTP, and then through that process, the community decides what they want.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't pick that up.
No, that's
No,
fine.
okay.
My apologies.
So
Nicola.
just want to build on your minutes from your last meeting. So there was a little bit of talk around the assessment of the community facilities and timeframe. One of the things that we're keen to do is keep council updated on where we are in the process, but also the Malvern Community Board in regards to the work in relation to Malvern community facilities. So at this particular point in time, we are working on the development of the project plan. So what is it we're going to do, and make sure we're clear around that. And also the timetabling of assessments in relation to various community facilities. So that's part of the research that we do, and understanding what our community facilities are, what the things like the seismic rating of those facilities are, what the utilisation is, what the conditions of the building are, what the status of the land is. All of that kind of thing will come together through that assessment process. So we've yet to timetable that. When we come back to you next with an update, we will hopefully have an indicative timetable, and it may be that some facilities are less complex and so can come forward, or some facilities may need to be moved around. So the timetable will be a little bit related to what those facilities are around. And then the anticipation is that the assessments will take place after that. So there'll be several things running in parallel: the research around the facilities alongside the assessment of the facilities, and then clearly we'll be having an opportunity to talk to community based on what comes out of that. We also suspect that we may have some gaps in our knowledge, and community are likely to be holders of that information. And so we think that there's quite a likelihood that we may want to talk to people in the community that have had a long association, or may even have documentation about the facilities that we may not necessarily have. And that comes through from previously having had hall committees where a lot of this information was previously held.
Okay, thank you for that, Dave. Some questions. Could I say I'm encouraged, by what you're doing? I'm encouraged also that you're taking it to the community. And I do congratulate you on that, because it's your community who are the people who are going to give you the ideas. The only thing I would be concerned about is if you've got one community wants one particular thing and it's not really economical for the other people to be there, I think we'd have to consider whether, you know, that is the right option. Questions? Kelvin.
Yeah, thank you, Denise, Hannah and Nicola, for coming and talking to us. And I'm encouraged by it as well, that we're going to go through this process. Firstly, get the knowledge, assess the facilities that we've got, because the best use of existing facilities is the best thing we can do. And then engagement, find out what people want, what people need, what people have aspirations for maybe. And then through to the LTP consultation, which is probably 2027. Am I correct with that? Yep. So that's where we're heading. So that's going to be good to get some more detailed time frames. I'd actually just like to put, it's not a question, it's a request, please, that in your process, if you could just be careful with the hub and spoke model, that you don't ignore the local aspect of things, that people are in place, they live somewhere, and also the travel that's involved. Because when we start trying to put all the martial art facilities in Rolleston, it's a long way from Arthur's Pass. And there might be a really good group of martial art experts in Arthur's Pass where everybody should travel to them, maybe. It's just an example. But I think it's really important just to keep that local focus for our local people and to also make the best use of our existing facilities. So if I could request that you just keep an eye on us all getting in our cars, because we can't get in buses here up in the hills, if you didn't know. We can almost get on our bikes, but only when it's downhill. It's a bit challenging going uphill. But if you can keep that travel aspect, because it takes time as well as money. So thank you.
Thanks, Kelvin. The other thing is we haven't mentioned parks or reserve yet at this stage, but no doubt you're doing some case studies on that as well, are you? Parks and reserves?
It's not part of this program of work.
No,
This
I
is
appreciate that,
fairly
but is there
comprehensive,
something that
But
you...
that is a piece of work that will be done.
Okay, that's what I'm saying, because I don't think, again, I mean, I do think the fact is that the parks and reserves in many instances are just as important as the halls. So, you know, because there's some parks being looked after well, I would suggest there's other parks that may be better looked after by the community. Any other questions? John?
Yeah, thank you for that comprehensive briefing. I suppose it's a chicken and an egg situation from my perspective, that planning and research is all very well, but if planning and research isn't informed by the community at the initial stages, I think we then can lead ourselves a little bit down the stray, maybe perhaps like the representation review, that a lot of research, if it's informed by the community, because the issues that I'm encountering in the community are that, not going too far back in history and looking at what we've got now and what we can change, that the community services are difficult to utilise. And I'm not putting the blame on anybody. I think it's a systemic issue. And that happens when you've got a centralised process. And I'm just wondering about bringing in focus groups from communities at an earlier stage within the first part when you're looking at the planning and research, so that when you've got a seminal idea, it can be tested in several different communities.
Thank you for that suggestion. I guess just to be clear around that, some of that is about getting our own house in order in terms of the information that already sits within the organisation. And I guess over time, through the various amalgamations of county councils, et cetera, some of the information is not necessarily in the same place. So some of that is about getting our own house in order in terms of making sure that we've got whatever information we have within the organisation that in the first instance. But absolutely hear your point about that the community is often the holders of very important information that should be used. And I'll invite Hannah to make a comment around that in terms of the process.
Yeah, so in terms of the first initial stage in the planning and research stage, as Nicola rightly said, some halls have very complex layers of information and things that impact it. So if a hall sits on a reserve, that immediately introduces complexities around what council can and cannot do. Same things around if it's earthquake prone, or if there is a treaty claim or something like that. So a lot of these things have got layers and layers and layers of information that needs to be looked at in the first instance. And then with that, once we kind of have a bit of an idea of what we know for certain, we know this for certain, then we can have that investigative approach with community. At this stage, we are planning on doing initial focus groups to find out what we don't necessarily know at this stage, and then progressing into further broader community engagement from there.
Yep, I think that answers it. John?
I would find it interesting if the board could have a notice or a list of the treaty claims that there are currently on foot in the district. And moving on, that I think that the repository of knowledge may well, with the greatest respect, not be within the deep archives of the council, may be lost, but within the local community. And there are people within the community that are akin to my age who would be more than willing to share their information, not me. And it would be important to tap into that information back to me, in my case, before I depart to pastures greener.
The point you make is valid. I guess I would still come back to the fact, as Hannah pointed out, before if we've got that information on record, we should know it. And some of our challenges, what do we have on record? And not all our systems are integrated, so that it does require some legwork to get to know what information we have. I understand that not all the important information sits with council. We get that, but we should at least know what information we do hold as a starting point around that, because there is quite a bit of information within council and what council holds.
Phil? John? Phil?
Just on that information, like a lot of information was taken in by council a few years back and is now no longer available and they cannot find it. Is that, there's all that information of deeds and ownerships and land handing over and all that, especially I'm coming from Horata, and it was all handed over and now it's disappeared. There's a real worry in the community that you are not a good holder of information. Was the original minute books and everything has disappeared when it went down to Leaston and then never ever got transferred.
My apologies on behalf of council if that's been your experience. I guess what we are aware of is that not all our systems are integrated, and so it does require a bit of legwork, and that is, I guess, exactly what we are trying to achieve, is to say, well, there are some records here. What information do we have? What information don't we have? And to source what we can within that. And some of it, you're quite right, some of it may be paper records that we don't have immediately available to us, so might take a bit more work. Some of them may have been digitized, and so that's very easy for us to locate. It's just a piece of work.
Sharon?
Yeah, thank you. And you've touched on that, Denise. Absolutely. Phil, we've heard from other groups as well that information was taken in. I think it would be fair to say, in terms of our information management systems and record keeping, it hasn't been the best. And there is a project that's underway, and part of that is about digitalizing, so that when information is brought in, it is scanned straight away and put into documents so that anybody can come and see it and people can come in and request that information. Unfortunately, at the moment, our systems are very manual and not sophisticated, and we can't necessarily guarantee where all the information is held or kept, and it could be on multiple different sites. So it is not a small undertaking to try and understand where all the information is.
Okay, thank you. One last question, John, and then we're going to wrap it up because I think it's been a very informative time. John?
I don't disagree, Mr. Chair. It has been an extremely informative time, as was the financial matters. The point that I would make, with the greatest respect, is that sometimes the current repository of knowledge within the community is worth council moving outside of the ivory tower and engaging with certain members of the community. And I'm sure the board members would willingly supply half a dozen names. And I'm sure that a 1.5 hour conversation in such a situation like that would be greatly helpful towards the council and may even save council officers time.
Thank you.
Denise?
Thank you.
Well, could I just sum it up? And I do thank you most sincerely. I think we've had a very informative session and I really appreciate that. Denise, thank you. And to Hannah and Nicola, thank you. It's been much appreciated. No doubt it won't be your first time and it won't be your last time. I can assure you of that, because we are very responsive to particularly halls and parks. That is part as we see it as one of our dues to do, is to look after them. But thank you, Denise. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, Sarah. Hamish. Not Hamish anyway, it's
No, it's Thomas.
Thomas. I wasn't far away. Okay. Many thanks, many thanks. Now, have we got anybody wishes to talk at the public forum? There's been nobody booked in, but if somebody wants to talk, I will. Okay, certainly, Grant.
Can I make the suggestion?
No, come up to the table, please, Graham, because and use the microphone.
Is that it?
Yep, thank you.
I'm disappointed that after me appearing at the last community board meeting and putting some questions that I had on behalf of the Springfield Flood Mitigation Program, when I was told that if you put your questions on paper and send them in at the next meeting, i.e. this, they will be addressed by representatives of the Water Services Committee. I found out on Friday that the Water Services Committee were either too busy or not interested or on holiday. If the whole of the Water Committee is on holiday, the Water Services staff are on holiday, I worry about where our next drink of water is coming from. And I find it a very, very poor excuse to say, we'll come and see you in October. I know Bruce has done a lot of work behind the scenes, but I'm sure that our community want to know more than what we're getting at the moment. And after being put off since the meeting that was held here in August 2022, we have literally heard nothing. Now, as I've said before, and you're bored to the back teeth about it, we don't know when the next flood's coming. If we knew that, we could say, well, yeah, it doesn't matter. But I'm disappointed, and I've got to say that I've got to air those views
Make a brief comment.
because
Yeah,
I'm
look, thank
speaking
you.
on behalf of the community.
No, look, thank you, Graham.
So,
Darren? Don't just stay there, Graham, please.
Thank you, Graham, and I apologise that the team aren't here, but the people with the most knowledge aren't here to speak, but they will be here in October. Your questions will be answered. But I also understand, and I gave Bruce some feedback too, with regards to the proposition that the team have put forward about wanting to have some community members from the Springfield group to work with Selwyn District Council, but also ECAN colleagues about the work that needs to be undertaken, because it is in the long-term plan, albeit it is at year 10 and 11, in terms of there is a small amount of funding that is available to do some work. But the main bulk of the funding, if it's in year 11, is not yet fully budgeted for. But the team want to have some nominated community members to have a working group to work alongside with.
Thank you, Sharon. I have intimated to Graham on that, and it's a matter now that we're going to proceed. I think we have the guarantee from the Chief Executive that there will be staff available to work on this working committee in conjunction with the two nominated persons, be it from Springfield, with ECAN and a couple of members from the community board.
Yeah, you know my feelings.
Yes, I do,
And,
Graham.
I hope that this step forward continues at pace.
Correct.
Because the next flood could be 3 days away.
Yeah, and I fully support your concept. I really do. But I do believe now we've got some positive action. And I do believe that as far as we're concerned, we'll keep pushing that. I can assure you of that. We've got the from our chief executive, and so therefore I'm quite sure there will be some action.
Sorry, I've just got a note.
Sorry, Sharon.
There are two parties here. It is ECAN and SDC. So it involved in this. So in terms of a leadership in some respects, so we've got to get all parties working together.
I agree, Graham. It shouldn't have taken what 4 years. Well, since 2022, taken this long. But I do believe now, to put it laterally, we've got the bull by the horns. John.
Mr. Chair. Councillor Mackenzie from ECAN wished me to put in an apology because he was prepared and willing to come up here today to start to have the conversation, and I'm sure that there will be no difficulty getting our colleagues from ECAN, and the community board is more than willing to work with them to make sure it happens.
Yeah, I think that would be right. I actually told John to tell God, I know him that well, Ian Mackenzie, don't bother coming. And likewise, I've also said to him, but it's entirely up to you people whether you want him at the meeting on the 1st of October. But I think at this stage, we're jumping the horse before it's got to the hurdle. John, quickly.
Mr. Chair, quickly, I would quite like to start building the hurdle so that we've got some initial dates so that Mr. Dawson's issue can be addressed.
Okay, thank you.
The team are coming next MCB to talk. What we're waiting for, and I think, John, you might have had the email too. We're asking for a couple of community representation people to have some names, so we can't start pulling together a working group until we've got the names. So, Graham, if you give, that's absolutely
You are
fine.
aware of it now, Graham. I've already told you that. So we can get those names to you today if you wish. Phil.
There's also catchment group parties that should be involved in this as well, not just ECAN and
Correct.
So like John Gregg and all that
Yes,
group.
so
So John Gregg was going to be here as well, and I
Yeah,
cancelled
John-
him only an hour ago. So
John has made himself willing to do that. And I think again, Graham, you are aware of that as well. Okay, so can we move on? Item 3, are there any conflicts of interest from our members? Okay, move on. Public forum, we're done. Okay, the confirmation of the minutes which are before you. Now, Brian, you spoke about the concerns that's the flooding in Springfield. You don't want to add anything more to that? It's as is written in the minutes? Sorry?
You called him a different
Oh, I
name.
beg your pardon. Yeah, Graham, no, that's right. We've done that. Sorry, I thank you. You know, they tell me it's old age. I'm not sure. Okay, is there any items in the minutes that you wanted corrected or anything like that? The other thing, Councillor Bob, The grants that we put forward as a recommendation from the community board, have they been approved or not? Have we heard anything? Have you had a meeting? No. They haven't. Sorry?
No, that's all coming up the way.
So the panel was established at the last council meeting and the names were put forward, and the panel will be pulled together, and I understand it's going to occur after every council meeting. There will be a lineup of the panel.
Yeah, well, I would hope so, because this is different from when we got it. We actually approved them there and then. A month has gone past, and I'm just concerned if it's going to be on a monthly basis from now on, 100%.
Having a first meeting at some point.
Okay, that's fine. Now, the other thing too, have we heard from Sian in regards to the proposal put forward by Ms. Lizelle, Neil, now to have a regular night market in Darfield? Has anything gone further from that? So it's just something we can follow up then, John.
Yeah, I'll follow that up with Sean. I have checked with her and she hadn't had any more communication with her today. But,
Okay, thank you.
we just need to check how we're supporting that person.
Yeah, right, that's okay.
Service the community.
All right, do you want to go on to do that confirmation on minutes first and then go on to?
Well, do you want to do your confirmation first and then go on to the action points?
Yes, okay. So somebody prepared with Phil?
Yeah.
Okay, a seconder? Calvin, that the minutes as presented be confirmed. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Right. Okay, we'll move on to page.
Mr. Chair, a question.
You will see, sorry, John.
A question in relation to Mr. Stewart raising the issue of the power pole alignment on Cass Strait.
Oh, yes, but I think you'll see that in the.
Oh, okay.
It's in there because there's a certain law that they've agreed to. So if you look from page 10, the Sheffield Memorial Regates, as I understand, were sold legally to the people who currently own them. You can.
Yes.
You can vouch for that, Brian?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. So again,
We're
I
quite
think.
happy with that.
Sorry?
We are quite happy with that. We know where they are. We know it was sold legally. That's the end of the story.
Yeah, so I think the matter can be closed.
Yes.
Yeah, fine. Thank you, Brian, for that. Okay, then your next one is the question that you have asked, John. Read the oh no, that's the support charges. I beg your pardon. Community hall. Do you want to make a comment on any of these, Sharon, or not?
All I would say is that you've asked for additional information, and that will stay live and open with regards to the community halls. The team have outlined, and we will make sure that we keep you regularly updated with regards to that. Mr. Dawson and the Springfield flooding, so that will, again, we will get some names and the staff will just provide a general overview for MCB in October and how the focus group will then proceed. Mr. Stewart, around that was a public forum in July about the power pole placement. So staff have provided some information there that I'll take it as read. But that's clearly the point that John's got to ask.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And I
Did
suppose.
you want to comment further?
Please.
Yes,
It's
right.
only brief.
Okay, John.
My comment there, has anyone informed Mr. Stewart? And I think this is one of the loops I'd like to see just focused on, that it comes through in the minutes, and I do admit I missed this, but Mr. Stewart contacted me and he was concerned that he hadn't heard back.
Okay.
And I was just wondering, is it the board's response or is it the governance response to follow up and notify the individual?
Usually the board responds back if it was a public forum.
Right, so.
Okay, well, you can. Thank you, Sharon. Oh, in regards to where the Darfield High School, it came out of the, our, fund. You know.
Yeah.
So it's a matter, again, do you want us to make application for your next meeting? For the $500?
To be honest, Bruce, I'm not sure how those are the only part that I'm not sure how it works.
No, well, evidently, according to this, it came out of our discretionary fund when we did it, when we controlled our own discretionary fund.
Yes.
Now we don't control our discretionary fund.
But I would expect that Darfield School will put their application in. And as we said, when applications come in from the Malvern area, the Malvern Community Board will be given access and will be asked, so through via Bob, he will ask for MCB's recommendation as to whether you see this
No, but this
continuing.
this is a prize that we give.
It still would have come through your discretionary fund and you would have voted on whether you give it each year.
No, but we've already agreed.
Hang
You've
on.
already agreed, but
Sorry. So
We've-
this sounds like a completely different thing if it's a prize.
it's a prize.
And it's been a long-standing prize?
Yes.
Is that what I'm hearing? Okay,
But it's according to this, it's originally come out of the discretionary fund, our discretionary fund.
yes, but
Phil, did you want to make a comment?
We've actually paid it and handed the money over to them using it out of our own budget.
Yeah.
So it's got nothing to do with discretionary.
no,
funds.
that's,
Yeah.
so I was going to say it hasn't got anything to do with discretionary fund and MCB can continue on to do that.
But it is through the community
But
board,
that doesn't
separate
work.
to the other one.
We just won't drink
No,
some
it
coffees.
just said where the funding came from.
Yeah, out of the Melbourne Ward discretionary fund.
Yeah, and I would probably say that was probably not the right place for it to have come
Okay,
from.
okay, that's what staff gave us, that was all.
Yeah,
So it's
previously.
Yeah, so it's a matter, Mr. Treasurer, have we got $500 that you, because we have talked about it, so it's got to come out of our fund somewhere.
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
so-
fine.
yeah, we'll
That- so
sort it
that
out,
answers the question.
Yeah.
Because we've already told the Darfield High School that we were prepared to give $500 to be used at their discretion towards prizes. Okay, that's fine. So is there anything else on page 11 or page 12?
So
Yes, we haven't talked about the West.
Tom? Phil?
We haven't talked about
Doesn't square, yeah.
Oh, yes, of course. Yep. Yeah, I did see that. Oh, that's even marked, did you notice? Okay, well, at this stage, as I understand, we have agreed to put the money, the board has prepared to refund the money, providing that we see a plan of the original, which hasn't been provided.
Start again, Bruce, sorry.
Well, there was a plan originally
Yep.
constructed for the Tussock Square.
Yes,
And the Tussock Square, at this stage, we've just excused the figures, but I'm approximate, have spent 70,000.
Yeah.
And at that stage, there were 10,000 left over.
Yeah.
Which Westfield has requested that we either return or we use.
Yeah.
What we have said, none of us here have seen the original plan. And we've asked for that and it still isn't forthcoming. So what we agreed to be agreed to today was that, yes, we will return the 10,000, providing that, because there had been other things that may have been add to the beauty of it, which would be somewhere perhaps part of the 10,000. So the point is, though, we haven't seen any of the plans.
Yeah. And if you were to hand the 10,000 back in.
Sorry?
If you were to hand the 10,000 back in, it would then be at the discretion of the Westview Fund.
I'm fully
as well.
aware of that, Bob.
So, yeah,
I'm sorry, council, that what we have said at this stage, we're happy to hand that 10,000 back, but as none of us have seen the original plans, could it be better used that we could use the 10,000 to glorify what we've currently got?
yeah.
Other
But-
than that, if we can't,
Yeah.
because there was a lantern as part of the thing, which may or may not beautify what we've got.
Yeah.
But the point of the matter is, there may be something, once we've handed the 10,000 back, sure, we can reapply, but we've already got that 10,000.
in my opinion, you would, if you wanted to do anything on Tussock Square up to the value of $10,000, you would keep that fund and you would then instruct the staff to do what's necessary to finish that off up to the 10,000. Once you give it back, it's gone.
I know, that's what I'm saying, Bob, but
So
none of us here, other than yourself perhaps, have ever seen the original plans.
no, it was at the community board before this one.
That's what I'm
And-
saying,
and
but
the-
the original
and-
plans must be still available.
Yeah, I don't see that being a problem, Sharon, as the
if
plans
we
will,
can see
the
that-
plans will be somewhere.
Yeah.
In fact, I might even be able to
If we can-
find the set myself,
Yeah,
but,
all we're saying is if we can see the original plans.
Yeah.
And we may say, no, look, we can't do anything further here to upgrade what's there.
Yeah.
We'll give you the 10,000 back.
Yeah.
So that was the conditions that I understand that we agreed to as a community board. At our preliminary meeting, we agreed to that because none of us have seen the original plans. Simple as that.
Just
Am I in agreement with my fellow boards?
Can I just clarify that then? Our current agreement is that we'll hold on to the 10,000
Yeah.
until we see the existing
Yeah,
plans.
correct,
yes.
Sorry, the project plans.
Yep.
So that we can see what has and hasn't been provided.
Correct.
And then we can make a valid decision about whether we hand it back.
Yep.
We can't do anything with the 10,000.
Correct.
Or it's all done or whatever the
Correct.
situation is. And then we can make a valid decision. So that's, I'm just clarifying, that's what
Yeah,
our decision is.
That's exactly.
I'm
what
getting
we
nods
talked
from
about,
everyone.
and
Yeah,
that's
awesome.
what we talked about at the board.
Yep, no, that's fine.
Okay, so in the meantime, you and I will keep in contact.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Thank you. Actions we've done, correspondence, Charlotte. We move on to the reports. What was that one there? Oh, that's me. Okay, you've seen my report. It's pretty simple. As I say, we've all been working hard in regards to the representation committee. Hopefully that is going to be fulfilled to our expectations. So I'll move the report be adopted. Thank you, John. Seconder? Okay. Moved and seconded. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Calvin, if you'd like to move your report.
Yeah, I'd like to move my report.
Seconder for Calvin's report. Phil, thank you. Open for discussion, Calvin.
Yeah, it's basically a list of the meetings I've attended over the last month, including the local government conference, community board conference in Wellington, which was very useful, and we got a lot of support for community boards in general. And so that was very good to be involved with that. We've over the month been supporting the community, encouraging them to respond in the consultation that was out there for the representation review to try and make sure that everybody has their voice and their say. So that's been really good too. Other meetings, obviously, self-explanatory. The one that I'd like to actually focus on is the last Kerwi meeting, the Kerwi Residents Association meeting, which is not on that list because it was back in August. They have a bi-monthly meeting. They had a list of 14 items that they would like council to look at. This was back in June. Council have looked at them, most of them. There was 4 outstanding that they've come back to me and asked me to ask council again, which I've done. And those 4 are still outstanding, and we have some answers, and I'll be taking those answers. Well, I've already given the answers to Kerwi Group because we're in regular contact, but I'll take those 4 items to their October meeting, and I'll come back to our October meeting with any further requests they have regarding those 4. They've also got some questions about the reserve in Kerwi. So there's been some projects and some funds allocated to the work in the reserve. That as there is no longer a reserve committee or a hall committee, because that doesn't really apply to Kerwi, but there's no longer a reserve committee. So the the community association in Kerwi are asking if they could be involved in the decision making about which projects and which funding is spent first in the right order so that it supports the community rather than doing the bells and whistles first, maybe, or not till last. So that's another thing I'll bring to after their October meeting. I'll bring it to our October meeting. So I'll bring a report basically from Kirby Group about anything that's outstanding.
Okay, thanks.
And the last thing is on the financial statements. I was going to do a verbal, but I don't think I need to do that because I think we've talked about it long enough.
Yeah.
So thank you.
So if you've moved to report, it's been seconded, all in favour? Against, carried. Thank you, Calvin. Phil?
No.
You what?
No report from me this month.
Oh, okay, thank you. John?
Mr Chair, can I clarify, is that because Mr Freeman hasn't done anything this month?
I think he's done plenty.
Too
to
busy
be
to
honest.
actually do the report.
I think he's done plenty, to be honest with you, but never mind.
Okay.
We all lead busy lives, John.
Oh, apart from me. Okay, I'll move that my report be taken as read.
Second up. Thank you, Phil.
And
moved and seconded. Any commentary on it?
yeah, I'd just like to point out that my understanding is that the submissions received on the representation review have now jumped up to 615, and that in the final batch of submissions that were received in the last week, there was evidence of a reasonable, shall I say, hit rate from the community engagement experiment with the Malvern News. And I'd just like to thank those who helped me with the analysis of the results, admitting that they're unofficial and they're just, I'll take full responsibility, with an E and OE qualification, but they're looking very favourable. And I'd like to amend my report, please, in the third paragraph, the last line. I'd like to move that paid to do be crossed out. It was probably not the most appropriate choice of words, and that it be replaced with the word required. So the amendment is the words paid to do be crossed out in the final sentence of the third paragraph, and those three words be replaced with the word required.
That's here somewhere.
Yeah, we'll get some clarification
from you
afterwards.
Yeah, if we can, John, make sure we've got it right.
It's page 15, yeah, okay. Page 15 of my report. So the last sentence reads, and then it finishes with the words paid to do. It was maybe, I was a little bit stressed and didn't choose my words as judiciously as I would normally.
Okay.
And I would suggest that we replace it with the word
I'll agree
required.
to that, subject to you giving it so that we've got it right. That's right.
Yep.
Okay.
And I can assure you, John, I don't take anything personally.
No.
That's all right. And I suppose that the representation review was a good experience, and I was heartened by the number of submissions, and I must compliment the Selwyn District Council on the community engagement, actually moving up from 229 or something in the initial consultation to a whopping 615 responses for the initial proposal. So that was good communication strategy, well done. And I'm looking forward to the officer's report and the analysis that's been undertaken. But as I said, with considerable assistance, we've been able to undertake our own unofficial analysis, and there was a considerable response, considerable being relative, from rural areas within Malvern. And also there was quite a good response from people outside the Malvern ward, no doubt in response to one of the officers' reports comments that there didn't seem to be much support for the Malvern Community Board from outside the Malvern ward. So people in other wards must have taken that to heart. And the comments, paraphrasing, are, no, I disagree to a community board. However, a considerable number of people then added as a comment, it should be for the people of Malvern to decide whether the Malvern Community Board is disestablished. But no doubt, as I said, the officer's report will bring forward important pieces of information so the councillors are fully informed when they make their decisions. So in relation to support for the community board, just for the record, errors and omissions accepted, it seems as though 95% of people who identified in the Malvern ward were in favour of retaining community boards. 75% of the people in the Ellesmere ward were in favour of retaining community boards, and 60% of people in the Springs ward were in favour of retaining community boards. And I don't know, is there another ward I've missed out? But they probably don't count too much.
That was could I remind you, I think it was Rolleston.
Oh, thank you.
You know, the wee township.
Oh, the wee township.
Can
So
I just make a comment on that point, John? You said they were in favour of maintaining community boards. It was actually in favour of maintaining the Malvern Community Board, because that was the question that they were answering. So just a clarification there, but it's good to see that we got feedback from other wards.
thank you. And at 504 to 102 was the actual overall total. So that seems to me like a massive vote of support for retaining the Malvern Community Board, and maybe other wards will consider. Now, moving on to the issues raised by constituents, I must give a strong vote of appreciation to the roading team. Can you please pass that on, Sharon? Because I got a telephone call, and I'm not being cynical here, and the offer was made to meet with me on site and discuss the issue, which I really appreciated, because that's how I see the council working collaboratively with the community board. And the roading people are going to get a report back and provide that to the October meeting. So that was really much appreciated. I think the second item, the flooding and mitigation, has been done, so I don't need to follow through on that. Just a question, if I may, Mr. Chair, from the Chief Executive. There appears to be a water fountain, which is in Rolleston Town Square. Are you able to give me an off the top of the answer? Is Rolleston Town Square owned by the council or not?
Different parts of it are, and I'm not sure where the water fountain is. I can't say I've seen it, but I'm happy to go have a look.
Can that be on the agenda for October?
What is it specifically?
Actually, Bob's going to answer a question.
Just I had a email from another councillor just before I came here that noted what you put in, and there are fountains in Rolleston, but none of them are non-chlorinated. They are, yeah.
None of them are what?
Are non-chlorinated as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, to the best of her understanding, that they were fountains.
But the photo of the one here says chlorine free
Where's that?
In Rolleston.
in Rolleston.
Oh, okay, it was just, I got an email before I came here to say that Sophie had been and they weren't, so whether there's another one somewhere.
I'm not aware of any chlorine-free fountains, but I shall go and ask, and I'll.
It's like the restaurant there, just back behind the toilets. If somebody could just clarify that.
Yeah, most certainly ask.
Okay. Further comments, John?
Yeah, I suppose just on page 16 of the minutes, I think there's a more productive way. It's very nice to have people come and talk, but, and I'm just using this as an example, and like any example I use, I can be shut down in flames, but I'll take that risk. It just stunned me when a 30-page report on climate change got tabled at the meeting, and somebody was going to speak to that, and I'm sure the chief executive knows what it's like to be given a 5-page document and then work it through. So I just wondering if you have if something's going on the agenda, it's all very good to get a briefing, and I presume that after the excellent briefing we had today, there'll be a follow-up report circulated shortly after the meeting, just so that we've got.
So the team will put into writing the briefing that they gave you and circulate it as part of the minutes of the meeting.
And then my final point, which isn't on the report, is from my point of view, I would appreciate when the minutes have been taken and what have you, and have been run past the chair, rather than waiting until a month and it comes out in the agenda, by which time my little brain's a bit befuddled. It would be nice to actually, once the chair has said yes, the minutes are reasonably accurate, for them to be distributed in draft, so that then I can take a look and see if there are things I need to do. I don't look like a fool at the meeting by saying, oh, I didn't do that.
Any problem there?
I'm sure we can manage that.
Right, any further comments, John? I'm about to put the motion. All in favour of John's report, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Right, okay. Councillor Mugford.
Been involved with the future Selwyn, which has been a large piece of work, which will look at the future efficiencies of future Selwyn, which will be coming out into public arena in the future. Also, we involved with the future of funding in Selwyn with the new committee that's being set up with one councillor from each ward, so there'll be 4 councillors sitting on all the funding that will come in. So hopefully we'll get a funding that's more even between everybody, and so looking at that really, as we said before, there'll be a meeting before or after each council meeting where these things will be decided, and it will be in conjunction with Malvern Community Board, so they will come to them. And also the next on Thursday and Friday, obviously on the representation review. So I'd like to move my report.
Thank you. Seconder for Bob's report. Thank you, Kelvin. Any questions of Councillor Mugford's report? If not, I will put it. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Now we move on to the Chief Executive's report, starting on page 23. Starting on page 20, actually.
That's on page 20.
It takes on touch on page 20. Okay. You want to move your report at that stage and then it can open for discussion?
I can't move the report.
Oh, no, of course you can't. I'll move the Chief Executive's report, seconded by John. It's now open for discussion and for you to elaborate, John.
Thank you. I'll just, representation review is quite topical. We've got our hearing set down for a day and a half this week, and then the deliberations following shortly thereafter. So we've got, I think, 56 people coming to speak, which is great, and we look forward to that. And in terms of Councillor Mugford, Bob's covered off the future Selwyn update, and really just the super local awards. Just our youth council, fantastic job being finalists for one of the categories, and congratulations to them.
Okay, is there any discussion? John, could I just, before you start, I would compliment the Selwyn Council for, even though they didn't quite win it, at least they got mentioned, and I think it is set up in your foyer now, isn't it? You've got some point of award, isn't it set up in your foyer?
Their awards for Foster Park and
Oh,
other activities. Yeah.
Right, okay. John?
Just two, you'll be pleased to know, that in relation to the consultation for the long-term plan, and also in relation to the consultation for the representation review, there were stations in the Darfield Library, and they were removed well before the 5 p.m. timeframe. And in relation to the representation review, because I took more notice, the little electronic notepad came. So if I'd arrived at the Darfield Library after about 11:30 a.m. on the Thursday, the 5th of 4th September, I could have filled out a hard copy form, but because the whole display had gone, that I was prevented from doing an electronic submission. And the point is, there were several comments to me that if there's a closing off at 5 p.m, it should be fully available until 5 p.m.
I wouldn't disagree with you. I wasn't aware that they'd been removed before the closing time, so I'll follow up with the team.
Okay, thank you. And the second one too would be, Sharon this time.
Feel free to call me madam, I don't mind.
Do you have any comment to make on the disclosure deficits identified in the audit report, leaving aside the personalities and whose fault or the press reporting?
Yeah. So I think well, first and foremost, we have a really good, strong relationship with the auditors. In terms of the disclosures around the capital works programme, and in terms of timeliness around information, a number of that was driven by the challenges we had with the Magic Q system, which was underpinning a lot of those challenges and the fact that the system crashed. So I think it's fairly well documented with regards to that. And therefore that led to numerous other challenges. As with every audit report, we didn't get any qualifications, which is really good, but we did get points of note. And we will continue to look at the capital programme.
Thank you.
That answer the question? Yeah. Okay. All right, if there's no further comments, I'll move the motion that we accept the Chief Executive's report. All in favour, please will say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. We now move on to page 23. That was only just a comment.
25.
Yeah, eh?
Page 25.
85. There, these standing orders. Amendment to the standing orders. I've looked through them. It's only a matter of changing some names. It's largely to do with the quorums that you don't have to be present. Their recommendation is, as long as you're online, you can take part in the community. So
yeah,
I don't see any problems with these. That's all.
So if I'll just speak to it. So this is a result of during the COVID period and amendments to allow flexibility. A decision at a national level has since been made to enable that as an ongoing opportunity, which allows people to join in remotely. And that is a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's quite positive actually that it's a bit more modern, I feel.
That's
So
assuming we've got cover.
Do you want to recommend, just a minute, Colin, do you want a recommendation from us that we approve the, the proposed standing orders? You want?
So these have been to council and council has endorsed, and so in terms of, it would be great if MCB endorses them too.
Okay, Kelvin, you wanted to ask a question?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that this is basically about during COVID times, we allowed on a temporary basis for people to vote online, essentially.
Correct.
In terms of
Correct.
So this is just making it permanent. Yeah, so that we don't have to keep debating it and we don't have to keep.
That's correct.
So I will ask for a motion then by somebody that we recommend the proposal as is tabled. John?
I'll move that option 1 is recommended as accepted.
Thank you. Second up, Kelvin. Is there any discussion on it? I think it's a forward movement. Do you want to speak as I'm taking your reply, are you?
I couldn't agree more, Mr. Chair, that it is a forward step and will help with the efficient running. Just in number 7, I would like to express that my understanding, the report acts as consultation. My view of consultation is that something is put out, there's an opportunity to discuss it, there's an opportunity to have feedback, whereas in the greatest respect and just being purely objective, it was a fait accompli because there was a legislative change and it's implementing this. I just wanted to be clear that the council was clear on what consultation involves.
In terms of this is national legislative change, but yes, I'm quite clear on what consultation is, and if you as a board choose not to accept it, that is fine. That just therefore limits your opportunities.
Madam, I don't think there was any
Back
doubt
to madam.
that we were, it's my formal training, that my, there was any doubt that the board would accept the recommendation. It was just that I took umbrage to the fact that consultation may not have been the best word, and it can happen to the best of us. We can inappropriately choose words.
Absolutely.
I'm going to close the debate. I'm going to put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Right, okay, we now, standing orders, we've done that. Discretionary fund application summary. At this stage, as I understand, we haven't had any application for the discretionary fund. Which page is that on?
Very small letters. Yeah, the ones that cover the top of the page.
All right, we'll get back to the end of the thing here. Yeah, somewhere.
I think we can make it bigger in future.
Hey, yeah. Where the hell is it? Oh, that's there.
That's right.
I've got reasonable eyes. Can I borrow your glasses?
I can't see it with my glasses either, don't worry.
Rose, could you repeat who they are?
The Malvern small bore rifle. Darfield small bore rifle club, $750 to assist 3 students to compete in the National Secondary Schools Championship in Benham.
How much are they asking for?
750.
770. How many applicants is that for? Is it?
It's 3 students.
Sorry?
3 students.
3 students.
Darfield.
Right, okay.
Rose?
So it qualifies. Sorry, Kelvin.
Just a
Well,
question, last time we saw their applications, this time we didn't. Is there a reason for that? So last time we actually had a copy of all those applicants when we voted on it, there is this here's just a table.
Yeah, that's actually a fair point,
Yeah.
and we can find that information and it can be circulated, and you can have some agreement offline.
If you look in the minutes prior
Hey?
to, they were all listed and done rather than
Yes,
something,
but it's
something you
not
can't read
in the
there.
printed copy.
Yeah.
It's not in the PDF, is it?
If you
Yeah.
refer to our last minutes,
it's
you'll
not
see
in there.
that they were all
Can't be
listed
seen.
and who they were, etc.
So you have the copies, but do you have copies available?
Because it is public excluded.
But we're not in public excluded.
It's required, wasn't it?
No, we've never done it in public.
You've never done it in public
We've never
excluded.
done it.
Yes, so we have to take out the information that has the personal information on it.
Because we had one last time that we didn't agree to. We agreed, and it wasn't public excluded. We just felt they didn't
Sorry,
qualify.
Charlotte, are you saying that
Yeah.
the request has been circulated and it's on Diligent so that the board members can see it on Diligent?
Board members don't get diligence.
No, we don't do that.
That's what I'm saying, yes, but in terms of the board members are asking to see the information and we
Yeah.
should circulate it.
Because it's still on the recommendation that we put as a board to our representative.
Yes.
But it's on a public agenda.
That's the whole idea of it.
So rather than the information could be circulated out of session. And if the chair and the board are happy, you can have a discussion and a decision can be made back via the board chair that can be fed back to governance.
You're happy
Yeah.
with that? Right, thank you.
And that goes for both items.
Yep, that's both items.